Oh, that watch? I gave it to my sister. What's the point of you keeping it? It's a waste. What are you talking about? My heart nearly stops. The watch my mother chose for me, a treasure I've cherished for 10 years. My mind goes blank, and I can't think for a moment. I stand there, stunned, unable to comprehend this surreal and cruel reality. Michael looks down at me, smirking as he exhales a deep sigh. His eyes hold a cruelty I've never seen before, like he's crushing an insect beneath his shoe. The tender gaze he once showed me when he proposed is long gone. I collapse to my knees, trembling hands clutching at my chest, my heart pounding painfully. See? There you go again, playing the victim. He lights a cigarette, smirking, and intentionally blows the smoke in my direction. His every action seems designed to break me down. My mother once wrapped that watch around my wrist on the eve of my wedding. With this, you'll mark happy times. Her warmth is something I'll never feel again. You're so pathetic, Sarah. Clinging to a sentimental trinket like that at your age? Don't you know it's useless? My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 34 years old. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own. Life was hard, and I grew up watching her work tirelessly. Even when she came home exhausted, she would prepare dinner for us, her face pale and weary. I vowed to become financially independent and build a better life. Right after high school, I started working at a high-end department store in the cosmetics section. Though I was just a retail worker, people admired me for being employed at such a prestigious place. I still remember the joy of receiving my first paycheck. That night, I bought fresh tuna, Mom's favorite, and we celebrated together. 5 years into my job, my mother suggested something to me. There's someone I'd like you to meet. A friend of mine knows a wonderful man. Would you like to meet him? Working in the cosmetics department, I had no opportunities to meet men. Curious and open to the idea, I agreed. I met Michael at a local Italian restaurant. In a private booth, he greeted me with a nervous smile. I didn't expect to meet someone so amazing. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not used to places like this either. I laughed when he joked about wanting to grab a beer at a local pub afterward. His down-to-earth nature made me feel an instant connection. 6 years later, we had a beautiful daughter, Emma, who's now 5 years old. I wanted to give Emma the same love and care my mother gave me. Mommy, all my friends are going to theme parks. Can we go too? Emma's face brightened with hope every time she asked, even though Michael always prioritized his camping trips. Michael, who grew up with wealthy but emotionally distant parents, never truly valued family time. Despite his well-paid job, I noticed our expenses rising as Emma grew older. Michael's response was always dismissive. Don't worry about it. Just cut back on spending. Ultimately, I had to go back to work at the department store to cover the mortgage payments. Meanwhile, Michael continued spending extravagantly on his hobbies, leaving me to manage the household alone. One weekend, as I cleaned up after his latest camping trip, I found a lipstick-stained cup among his gear. When I confronted him, he brushed it off. It's probably from someone's wife. Why do you always overthink things? His dismissive attitude made me feel insignificant. Michael's camping trips left me with an enormous mess to clean. Sand-filled tents, dirty dishes, and scattered supplies cluttered our entryway. I eventually decided to stop cleaning up after him. For 3 weeks, the gear stayed where it was until Michael tossed it all into his study out of frustration. On top of Michael's selfishness, I also had to deal with his sister, Marie. Marie, 2 years younger than me, was spoiled and self-centered. After being kicked out of her parents' house for freeloading, she moved into an apartment near us. Weekends became a nightmare as Marie showed up with bags of laundry. "Here's my laundry. I'll pick it up Sunday night. Thanks." She would drop off 2 full bags, leaving me to sort and wash them in multiple loads. Our washer was constantly occupied, leaving me unable to do my own laundry. Despite having a washer in her apartment and passing laundromats on the way to our house, she always came to us. Even worse, Marie would show up unannounced on weeknights. She and Michael would laugh loudly in the kitchen, disturbing the peace of my evening. "What's for dinner, Sarah? I'm starving." Her tone was entitled, treating me like her personal chef. One evening, I warmed up leftovers, hoping to avoid cooking more. "Is this it? No meat? Cook me some steak." My patience snapped, but before I could respond, Michael chimed in. "She's my sister, Sarah. Just cook her what she wants. It's not that hard." Reluctantly, I began cooking, biting back tears of frustration. When the steak was ready, Marie took one bite and grimaced. "Ugh, what is this? Cheap meat?" She spat it out onto her plate, making me feel humiliated. Michael handed her barbecue sauce from the fridge without hesitation. The stark difference in how he treated her and me was unbearable. As they laughed together, I overheard Marie ask for money. "I'm short on cash this month. Can you help me out?" "Of course, sis. You deserve it." I couldn't believe my ears. We were struggling to pay our mortgage, yet he had money to give her. Marie claimed to be an influencer, yet her social media presence barely had 36 followers. She spent excessively on clothes, justifying it as a necessity for her brand. My frustration grew, but I bottled it up for the sake of peace. Then came the incident with my mother's watch. One morning, I went to retrieve it from my drawer, but it was gone. I searched everywhere, panic rising as I realized it was missing. This watch was an heirloom, passed down from my grandmother to my mother and then to me. It symbolized love, resilience, and the hope of building a happy home. I confronted Michael, desperately asking if he had seen it. "Michael, do you know where my watch is?" "Oh, that old thing. I gave it to Marie." My blood ran cold. Why would you do that? It's not just a watch, it's a family heirloom." "Marie wanted it. What's the big deal? I'll buy you another one." I couldn't contain my anger any longer. "Go get it back now." "No way, she's my sister, and she deserves it." His blatant disregard for my feelings shattered any remaining trust I had. At that moment, I made up my mind. I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. Michael froze, his face a mix of shock and disbelief. Michael's disbelief quickly turned to anger. "Divorce? Oh, don't be ridiculous. You can't survive without me. You don't even make enough money." He laughed bitterly, mocking my ability to stand on my own. But I stood firm. I'd rather struggle than live like this. I went to my daughter's room to pack our things. "Emma, sweetheart, we're going to Grandma's house for a little while." "Did I do something wrong? Is it my fault?" Her wide, tearful eyes broke my heart. "No, honey, you didn't do anything wrong. Mommy just needs your help finding something at Grandma's." I hugged her tightly, silently vowing to protect her from this chaos. Emma beamed, showing me a paper watch she had crafted from colored paper and crayons. "I made you a new magic watch, Mommy." Tears filled my eyes as I slipped it on my wrist. "It's perfect. Thank you, Emma. Now let's get our things and go." As we gathered our belongings, Michael watched from the doorway. "You're really leaving? Over a stupid watch?" "It's not just the watch. It's everything. Goodbye, Michael." Holding Emma's hand, I walked out the door and didn't look back. As we reached the street, a loud bang startled us. I turned to see smoke pouring out of the house. Flames quickly engulfed the building as neighbors ran out to call the fire department. Michael stumbled out, coughing and covered in soot. Emergency responders arrived, extinguishing the blaze, but the house was a total loss. Later, investigators confirmed the fire had started in Michael's study, where he carelessly stored his camping equipment. They determined he had been smoking near flammable materials, causing a deadly explosion. Thankfully, Emma and I were safe. I moved in with my mother while Michael recovered in the hospital. News of the fire and the divorce spread quickly, and whispers filled the neighborhood. Michael's sister Marie continued to demand help from me, showing up at my mother's house uninvited. "Marie, I can't help you. I have my own problems to deal with." "Ugh, you're so selfish. What kind of sister-in-law are you?" Despite her insults, I refused to let her manipulate me any longer. Meanwhile, Michael's actions began to catch up with him. Social media exploded with revelations about his behavior. His infidelity, recklessness, and mistreatment of me and Emma became public knowledge. His reputation, along with Marie's, was utterly destroyed. Their lives unraveled as Michael struggled with debt, and Marie lost her job after being exposed for her online lies. With the divorce finalized, I gained full custody of Emma. I found a small apartment and began rebuilding our lives. Emma's smile, once dimmed by the chaos, grew brighter each day. "Emma, no matter what, we have each other, and that's all we need." Emma hugged me tightly, her paper watch still on my wrist. Together we began our journey toward a happier, more peaceful life. I stared at the scene in disbelief, feeling the heavy weight of the betrayal sinking in. "You filthy outsider! Get out of here! I never want to see your disgusting face again!" With venom in her voice, she hurled the contents of a salt bowl directly at me, the grains cascading down my head and shoulders. The world seemed to freeze as I stood there paralyzed and humiliated, the salt trickling down like icy tears. My husband sat a few feet away, staring intently at his phone, utterly indifferent to the chaos unfolding around him. This was his mother's funeral, yet he acted as if I were invisible, as if the insults aimed at me were none of his concern. 13 years ago, my life had changed drastically when my mother-in-law suffered a debilitating stroke. From that moment on, I took on her care entirely: hospital stays, rehabilitation, and round-the-clock in-home care. Even sleepless nights spent helping her with basic needs were worth it for the small moments when she smiled and said thank you. "Thank you, Catherine. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far." Those words had kept me going. They reminded me of the bond we shared, one built on mutual respect and love. But today, standing at her funeral, facing the vile words and actions of her daughter and the apathy of my husband, I couldn't help but wonder, had my years of dedication meant nothing? I clenched my fists, determined not to let tears fall, and bowed my head in an effort to contain my emotions. Then, as I turned to leave, her voice cut through the tension. "Where do you think you're going? You're not done here." I froze and turned slowly, my mind racing. My role as the caregiver had ended, yet here I was, treated as nothing more than a disposable servant. That night after the funeral, I couldn't shake the sting of their words. 13 years of sacrifices and devotion reduced to a single moment of utter disrespect. I returned home that evening, feeling the crushing weight of exhaustion and humiliation. The house was eerily silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My husband was in the living room, once again glued to his phone. "Michael, can we talk?" "About what? I'm busy." His tone was dismissive, and he didn't even glance up. "About today, about your sister, and what she said at the funeral. You're overreacting. She didn't mean it." The casual shrug of his shoulders made my blood boil. Overreacting? She poured salt on me and screamed at me to leave. You just sat there. "Look, Catherine, I have enough on my plate. I'm not going to get in the middle of your drama with my sister." "Drama? 13 years of caring for your mother was not drama." I walked away, realizing that any further conversation was pointless. The next morning, I found a small envelope tucked into my bedside drawer. It was Emma's handwriting. Inside was a note, short and simple. "Catherine, thank you for everything. You've been my greatest blessing. Keep this letter close. It's my final wish." My eyes welled up with tears as I held the note. I didn't know how, but her words gave me the strength to get through the coming days. 2 weeks after the funeral, Michael and his sister gathered all the family for a meeting. I've consulted with a lawyer, and as her son, I'm entitled to the majority of Mom's estate. And I should get my fair share too. Catherine doesn't deserve anything. Their greed was on full display. "Your mother left a will. It clearly states her wishes." "Oh, we'll see about that." He smirked, clearly ready to contest anything that didn't benefit him. I produced the letter my mother-in-law had given me. Reading her exact words aloud, the room fell silent. She left everything to her grandson. "Not to you, not to your sister." Their faces contorted with disbelief and anger. "That's not fair. She didn't know what she was doing when she wrote that. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted her legacy to be with someone who would honor her, not exploit her." Michael slammed his fist on the table. "I'll fight this. I have a right to what's mine." A cousin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Michael, sit down. Catherine took care of Aunt Emma for 13 years. What did you do?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. I stood firm, clutching the letter tightly. The truth was on my side, and I would honor her wishes, no matter the cost. The family meeting ended with Michael and his sister storming out, clearly furious and vowing to contest the will. I sat alone in the quiet room, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The days that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings with attorneys. Michael's threats to contest the will became real when he filed a legal challenge, claiming undue influence on his mother. I knew I had to be prepared for a fight, not just for myself, but for my son and to honor my mother-in-law's wishes. Meanwhile, the truth about Michael's infidelity and his sister's death began to surface among the extended family. Their once neutral stance shifted, and they rallied behind me, offering support and validation for all I had endured. My son Daniel stood by my side throughout it all, becoming my pillar of strength. "Mom, we're going to get through this together. Grandma believed in you, and so do I." His words reminded me why I was fighting so hard. The court case dragged on for months, filled with accusations, counter-arguments, and a relentless determination from Michael. However, the evidence was clear. The will was valid, and Emma's intentions were unmistakable. During the final hearing, my attorney presented the letter my mother-in-law had written to me, which proved her mental clarity. This letter, written in her own hand, expresses her gratitude to Catherine and her desire for her grandson to inherit. The courtroom was silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. "The will is upheld. All assets will be transferred to the beneficiary named in the document." Michael and his sister were visibly stunned, their faces pale as the judge's decision sank in. Outside the courtroom, Daniel embraced me tightly. "We did it, Mom. Grandma's legacy is safe." Tears streamed down my face as I held him, finally feeling the weight of years of sacrifice and struggle lifting. Michael's and his sister's lives began to unravel after the court's decision. Michael was left with mounting debts and no assets to his name, forced to move into a small apartment. His sister's financial woes worsened as creditors pursued her relentlessly. They had both gambled everything on greed and deceit, only to lose it all. Meanwhile, Daniel and I began to rebuild our lives. "Mom, I want you to live here with us. You've done so much for everyone. It's time for you to have peace." His invitation brought me a sense of belonging and purpose. Moving in with Daniel and his new wife was the start of a new chapter. Their kindness and respect reminded me of the love Emma had always shown me. One day, Daniel's wife suggested something that sparked a new dream for me. "Catherine, with all your experience, have you thought about becoming a caregiver professionally?" The idea intrigued me, and with their encouragement, I decided to pursue certification as a caregiver. The process was challenging but rewarding, as I found a new sense of purpose in helping others. My past hardships became a source of strength and compassion, guiding me in my new career. As time passed, Daniel and his wife built a happy home filled with laughter and love. I often thought of my mother-in-law and the lessons she had taught me about resilience, kindness, and family. Thank you, Emma, for everything. Your love continues to guide me. Each day as I worked to create a better future, I felt her presence, reminding me that I was never truly alone.